September 1963. A back room in a Queens bar. 4 men around a card table, whiskey poured cheap, smoke thick enough to chew. There was laughter, but the kind with teeth. The kind that hides something ugly underneath. Jimmy Burke set his cards down and looked across the table. He said 5 words. "Let's go take a drive." That was it. No explanation, no question. Every man in that room knew exactly what those words meant because in this world, you learn fast what certain silences cost you. Dominic Serzani, 50 years old, a man who had survived things that would break most people, stood up without hesitation. He had known Jimmy for 15 years, built him, protected him, and handed him everything. So when Jimmy said move, Remo moved. He had no reason not to trust him. And that trust was about to get him killed. Remo grew up on the Lower East Side around 1893, when those streets weren't romantic or gritty in a movie way. They were just hard. He learned what he needed to learn, and by the 1940s he had worked his way up to captain in what would later be called the Colombo crime family. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't need to be. His power came from patience and control, from being the man that dangerous people came to when they needed something settled. He ran operations across Bensonhurst and Ozone Park, stolen goods, money laundering through garment factories, check forgery, and hijacking. He kept his name off things and his fingerprints off people. His philosophy was simple. Don't be the wildest man in the room. Be the one managing the wild men. And for a long time, that worked. By the late 1940s, he had positioned himself near JFK Airport, and that access meant shipments, cash, jewelry, and merchandise moving through New York from everywhere in the world. His network was quiet, efficient, and almost impossible to touch. Almost. Jimmy Burke's childhood was a wreck from the start. Orphan young, bounced between foster homes where abuse was more common than meals, he came up hard. At 13, a car accident killed his foster father, and Jimmy carried the weight of that, the blame, the anger, for the rest of his life. Reformatories became more familiar than open streets. In 1949, Remo saw something in him that no one else bothered to look for. A young man with nothing to lose and violence already built into his bones. Remo took him in, gave him structure, showed him how the game worked, the rules of respect, how to move money, how to manage men who would just as soon stab you as shake your hand. He even gave Jimmy a nickname, the Irish Guinea. Half joke, half invitation into a life that would define him completely. For the next decade, they were inseparable. Partners, family, the kind of bond that only forms when 2 people have shared real danger together. Throughout the 1950s and into the early 1960s, Burke and Serzani ran everything together. Hijacking, garment district laundering, forged checks moving through Queens and Brooklyn. All of it coordinated, all of it split between them. Sometimes 50-50, sometimes adjusted based on who put up what. But the numbers, they were secondary to the relationship. They spent holidays together with their wives, took trips, and on the surface, it looked almost normal. Just 2 men who trusted each other in a world where that was nearly impossible. Burke absorbed everything Remo taught him. Not just the skills, but the thinking. How to build a network, how to maintain influence without showing your hand. How to keep men who could hurt you in line without making them feel cornered. For Jimmy, Serzani wasn't just a boss or a mentor. He was the closest thing to family he had ever had. Which is exactly what made what came next so devastating. By 1963, Serzani was falling apart in ways he couldn't hide. He'd gotten deep into speed and heroin, and the drugs were doing what they always do, eating away at the judgment that had kept him safe for decades. His decisions were getting sloppy. The indictments were piling up, and the walls were closing in fast. So he made a choice that sealed his fate. He went to the NYPD and gave them what they needed. To save himself from the charges mounted against him, he handed over the details of one of Burke's biggest operations, a $200,000 hijacking. He gave up the man he had raised like a son. Burke found out. He always found out. From that moment, the trust he had placed in Serzani collapsed completely. What replaced it wasn't just anger, it was a cold suspicion that never left him again. Within a week, Burke had made up his mind. Serzani had to go. And the cruelest part of it was that Remo had no idea. He kept acting normally, even offering Burke round-trip tickets as a gesture of goodwill, as if the world hadn't already tilted beneath his feet. Burke brought Tommy DeSimone in on it. The plan was deliberate and personal. Simone would use piano wire, which meant getting close, which meant looking the man in the eyes. This was not a long-range hit. It was intimate by design. They chose the bar and the nearby lots because Serzani would be comfortable there, which made him easier to manage. The evening started the way it always did. Poker, whiskey, the usual noise of men who thought they were untouchable. Then Burke said those 5 words, and everyone got in the car. They drove to the lot behind Mumu Veda's dress factory, the one that had both their names on the paperwork. Simone looped the piano wire around Serzani's neck, and Remo fought hard, with everything he had, kicking and clawing. But it didn't matter. The fighting only made it worse. When it was done, they buried him shallow in the bocce courts behind Robert's Lounge. The Cadillac went to a scrapyard in Starrett City and came out as a cube of metal. And then Burke and Simone came back to the bocce courts and played cards on top of the freshly cemented grave. That last part wasn't just practical. It was a message to themselves, to anyone who might ever find out. This is who we are, and nothing you do to us touches us. That night finished off whatever was left of Jimmy Burke's ability to trust another human being. Paranoia became his default. Every associate, every partner, anyone who knew too much became a potential threat that needed to be removed. Killing stopped being emotional and became logistical. Henry Hill stepped into the gaps Serzani left behind, managing the stolen good pipelines and keeping the operations running. Burke had erased the man and kept the machine going without missing a beat, which told you everything about how he now viewed people. Tommy DeSimone, who had pulled the wire that night, disappeared in January 1979, shortly after being officially made by the Gambinos. The most likely reason was that he had killed without authorization, and someone decided that was a problem that needed to be cleaned up. Knowledge in this world has a very short shelf life. Burke himself killed Richard Eaton in 1979 with the same cold precision that had become his signature. He died in prison in 1996 from lung cancer, serving 20 years to life for that murder. Not a single charge ever stuck for Serzani, or for most of the other lives he had ended. Henry Hill cooperated with authorities in 1980 and told investigators about the Serzani murder and the piano wire. They found nothing indictable. The law never caught up with it. The hardest lesson from all of this is that the person who builds you can also be the one who destroys you. And sometimes you do the same to them. Serzani betrayed Burke out of desperation, and Burke responded the only way he knew how, which was to remove the threat completely and never look back. In this world, loyalty wasn't valuable. It was a tool. And when it stopped being useful, it got discarded along with everything else. The system didn't punish cruelty. It rewarded it, quietly and consistently, until the people inside it stopped being able to feel the difference.